to the operations of the board, but excluding the case that is scheduled for this evening. Mr. Hastings. Good evening. If you could start with your name and address.
Is this working all right?
Yep.
I have to check because it is. Kim will come out here and beat me up. My name is Ken Hastings. I live at 39044 Holly Drive, Mechanicsville, 20659. I'm here tonight just to follow up briefly on the discussion last time about the Guilford Open Meetings Act violation before the Board of Appeals. I thought Chairman Moon did a good job of presenting the highlights of highlights and lowlights, as it turns out, of the violation. But there's some things that maybe a lot of people don't know about it that I think are important. First off, the Planning Commission tried to kill Guilford first. The very first time it was heard, the preliminary subdivision plan was heard, the Planning Commission refused to approve it. They were asking Billingsley Road questions, strangely enough, that no one wanted to answer, and which would turn out to be the basis for overturning their decision later on by the board. The project was saved from defeat by the planning director who promised answers next time. Okay, sound reasonable. 4 months later, there were still no answers. There were new planning commission members. There was a change in attitudes by some of the planning commission members who didn't want to approve the first time. There was a nice staff report, actually written by the developer, and the project passed by 1 vote. Then there was some bad advice from counsel for the planning commission, provided by the county attorney's office, that actually serves as the catalyst for the appeal. I don't think we would have appealed absent that fiasco with the county attorney's office. Finally, the county accepted our $1,300, scheduled the appeal before the Board of Appeals, and of course the first thing was the motion to dismiss, which seemed doomed to failure when counsel for the Board of Appeals, not your current counsel, not the one just before this, but one beyond that, at the time insisted that the Board of Appeals needed more evidence before voting on the motion and could only be provided during closed session. Preposterous. Okay. Under duress, the Board of Appeals agreed, went into closed session, ignored counsel's advice to approve the motion, heard the case on its merits, and reversed the Planning Commission decision with prejudice. Score high points for everybody. In the end, the Board of Appeals decision mirrored the Planning Commission commitment not to approve the project in the first place. Finally, though, the stench left over from the closed meeting got the best of me, and I filed an Open Meetings Act complaint with the Compliance Board. But first, I filed a Public Information Act request with the county for some of the documents that are supposed to be provided when someone goes into closed session. And one of the things I asked for were the minutes of the closed session. Seems like a reasonable thing, even though I really doubt that the county had any, because when I went down this road before, they never had minutes to closed sessions. And then I was advised by an associate county attorney that the minutes were sealed, and I couldn't have them. Long story short, there are no minutes for the closed session, sealed or otherwise. They were just making it up as they went along to keep me at bay, I guess. The county attorney's office that didn't know the Open Meetings Act well enough to close the meeting correctly didn't know how to defend themselves against my complaint to the Compliance Board. The Compliance Board agreed with me that the county had done almost nothing right in regard to the technical requirements for the Open Meetings Act. But that's not where the story really needs to end. The same can't be said by the way the Board of Appeals handled the appeal itself. Of all the agencies and individuals who had the opportunity and evidence necessary to stop this project, only the Board of Appeals actually did it right in spite of obvious pressure to do otherwise. Hats off to the Board of Appeals, and thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a statement about board operations I'd like to make at this time that I was actually planning to make before Mr. Hastings spoke this evening.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, as you know, I wasn't able to attend our last meeting. I apologize. Conflicts ensued. And so it's my understanding that the board was required to make a statement about the finding that we had violated the Open Meetings Act. And so I missed my opportunity 2 weeks ago to contribute to that statement, and I'd like to add to that record at this time, if I may. I'm incredibly disappointed with the way that Open Meetings Act violation was handled by our staff. In fact, it has come to my attention that despite in the response to the complaint stating that they had turned over all possible leaves looking for what transpired in that meeting. I can tell you that they did not ask any of the board members who were in the closed session what took place, including the chairman. It has come to my attention that the chairman asked the county attorney's office, once he realized that the complaint had been made, to draft us a response and then to let us review it. It went out without our ability to review it. In fact, no one who was in the room on this board was ever asked what transpired, and I think it's outrageous. So, Mr. Hastings, I wanted to thank you for making your complaint, and I'd like to add to the record now exactly what transpired. The gentleman who insisted that we go into closed session, our legal advisor at the time, above my objections in this open session, proceeded to attempt to tell us why his personal agenda would be hurt if we took the action it appeared that we were about to take. He offered us zero legal advice, and at least 3 board members sitting here tonight told him to shut up in that room. We then terminated our business, came back in. The chairman gave an accurate summary of what we had actually discussed. He didn't highlight the fact that an attempt to break procedure had been made, which I just view as insignificant because the offense never took place. We quashed it, but there was an attempt to do so. I would not have said this openly and on the record and on television if I had been provided with a chance to put it into our official response, but that chance was denied to this entire board. I think that Mr. Hastings' comments tonight and my own should be looked at very carefully by our county commissioners and determine what role, if appropriate, our legal advice for our county boards should take. My reading of our rules say that they're here to provide us legal advice and counsel at our request, not to shepherd the process through to a desired outcome from somewhere else, some other agenda in the building. I'm not saying that's a widespread problem. I make no assertions as to what possible motive there was, but that's what took place in that closed session. An attempt was made to have us change our mind, not based on legal advice, and we were told the man to shut up, and we came back in the public and did it right. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything else? All right, so we'll move on.